My name is Curtis Eckerman, and I use iNaturalist quite a bit in my own classes at Austin Community College. And this video is for those instructors who are just getting started out, maybe want to use iNaturalist in their class, but are finding it a little overwhelming. So I want to show you how I use iNaturalist in the class and show you some tips and tricks and some things in iNaturalist that you would need to know to more efficiently manage your class and to pass on to your students. So I would say first that my class is broken up into 5 units, and each unit focuses on different groups of organisms. So for instance, the first unit is really kind of introduction to biology, but then I use iNaturalist as an introduction to iNaturalist as well. The second unit focuses on protists, and so I have a unit on protists. The third unit focuses on plants, and so I focus on plants and iNaturalist at the same time. And so I'll show you how, for instance, you can assign students to different groups, and then how you can search that student's observations and look for those types of observations. For instance, in the third unit, I have the students observe at least 40 plants and 10 fungi as part of that unit. And so I can go into that student's observations, look at their observations and sort through it, and that'll allow me to look at just their plants and fungi and allow me to assess their observations and give them a grade for that. Okay, but first things first, there are several videos on how to upload images. I'm going to go ahead and do that and just show you some things that you would need to pass on to your students. So I've logged into my account here, and generally after you've signed up and logged in, it'll come to this page each time you log in. So I'm at iNaturalist.org, and no matter where you go, there's always going to be this green upload button up here. And so the students and yourself can certainly use the smart device app. So there's an app for the Android and the iPhone, the iNaturalist app, that will allow you to take pictures and upload directly from the camera. But I myself find it easier to work with images on my desktop. So I take pictures with my camera or my phone, I upload them to my desktop. I may edit them. For instance, I will crop pictures because I want to focus on the organism. I might lighten up really dark images, and then I'll upload them. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to upload some images, and I'm going to show you this process. So I'm going to go ahead and upload, and you'll notice I can either choose files, or I can simply drag and drop, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to pull up this is one of my folders. This is a recent trip I took to Big Bend. I took some pictures at Fort Davis, and I'm going to go ahead and just select some images. I'm going to use my control button to select a few images of this towhee. I also want to add images of this sparrow, and I think I'll just go ahead and use those for now. And then I've got them. I'm going to drag them, and I'm going to drop them, and it will upload these images. Now, the first thing you'll notice is I have 6 pictures here, and right now it looks like I have 6 observations, but I only actually have 2 observations. So I can fix that pretty easily. So for instance, these 2 sparrows, it's just one observation. It's the same sparrow. I'm going to drag one picture onto the other. Now I'm going to decide which picture is going to be the first picture, and I want this picture here to be the first picture that's shown. So I'm going to drag the other picture on top of it, and it will add a picture. You can see this, it's picture 1 of 2, and I can actually go here, use these little arrows to see which image is there. And I'm going to do the same thing with my towhee images. I'm going to drag. I'm going to use that first image as my first appearance image. I'm drag them on there. So now I have 2 observations. This observation has 4 pictures, and this other observation has 2. Now, the reason why you would do this is I encourage all my students to take several pictures of an organism, because you never know what angle you might get that might be helpful in identification. It's always good to have multiple pictures here. So we're not done. We need to edit these images before we let them go, or let them go into iNaturalist. The first thing you can do is just simply click on species name. iNaturalist now has a kind of identification program that helps you to identify things. And I always tell students to make sure you put something It doesn't matter whether you put animal or plant or you know exactly what it is. Put something. It helps to put it on people's radars as they're looking for things to identify. So in this case, maybe I'm not sure that it's what kind of towhee it is, but iNaturalist is saying we're pretty sure it's in this genus, the towhees. So I'm going to click on that and it'll populate that. Now I can also type out things. I can, for instance, this is going to make a suggestion of sparrows here, but let's say, for instance, that I think it's I'm not sure that this is what this is, so I'm just going to use general sparrows. I'm going to type it out, sparrows, and you'll see various options. I can't just hit enter at this point because it won't do this properly. You have to go click on an option. So let's say I'm not even sure that it's a sparrow. Let's say I think it's a bird. I'm going to hit birds, and just make sure I clicked on that, and it'll say birds. Now in this case, I'm more positive of this identification, and I'm just going ahead and click on it again and let the iNaturalist tell us what it thinks it is, and it says it's pretty sure. A little rule of thumb here is that when it says we're pretty sure, that's a pretty good guess. When it doesn't have that, then you may not be as lucky. You may have to do a little bit more research or a little bit more searching, and I'll show you how to do that as well. But at least put something there. Now I have the dates and time, and if the students use their phones to take their pictures, it'll capture the date and the location, assuming they have that turned on. That's usually the default setting on their phones. And you can see that I had those turned on. I actually used a camera with GPS, and I can edit them. Say I know that that's not the date. I can go change the date. I can change the time, but I'm not going to do that. More importantly is the location. Now, when I click, if I'm going to go back quickly, I'm going to click on this little location, and it'll take me to where it took a picture. Now I'm going to have to zoom out here. I'm zooming out. And I know I took this at Fort Davis. Now I can look at a map like this, but I can also, so I know where I took the picture. You can also look at the satellite image of it too. For instance, I know I took this picture at the bird watching station, and that bird watching station was right here. So my current, and this happens because of cell phone data. It's not extremely accurate. Now, are you wrong just to leave it here? No, that definitely happen as long as you're in the general area. But I happen to know exactly where I took it, so I'm going to click right here. And actually, I take that back. It was right here. So it was right here, and I might even expand. I can click and drag this, and I can expand the area because it was in that general area. So I can be very specific, or I can be very broad. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to update the observation. And now my observation has a more accurate reading. I'm going to do the same because this was taken in the same place. In fact, I'm just going to click it on top of there, put it in the same area, make the area a little bit bigger. And I have done updating my, I've updated my dates. Now, let's say that, and in this case, I knew both of them were at the same location. I can select all, and I can go over here, and I could have edited them in the same way. I could have put them all at the same location. I could also edit the dates for both at the same time, and I could also edit the species at the same time. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now at this point too, this is where you want to add a description. Now this is a good one because this is where I can select all. I can edit the description of both at the same time. If I had different notes for the two, then I would enter them separately. But in this case, I saw them both at a wildlife viewing center there at Fort Davis State Park. So I'm going to write observed this bird at the wildlife viewing area at Fort Davis State Park. Now I could certainly put other notes to say that there's animal behaviors you want to note, it did something interesting, or there's just something else you want to put in there. That's certainly worth putting here as well. You can also select, go back here, you can select whether this location is public or private. Generally the default is public. I would leave it at public, that way people can see where you saw it. You can obscure the data. It'll make it won't tell you exactly where you saw it, but it'll tell you the general vicinity, or you can make it private. Generally somebody would want to obscure the location if, say, it was near their house and they didn't want somebody zeroing in on their house. That's generally not a problem here in iNaturalist, but that's certainly a good reason to do that. Another reason why to put location as private. Let's say it's an endangered species. Perhaps that would be a good reason to put that as private and only share that information with somebody where maybe an official where it would matter. Okay, I can do other things. I can tag things. I can put it in projects. We're going to leave those alone for now. You can play around with those. One of the things I do, for instance, I take a lot of pictures of insects at insect light, and I can tag that as being seen at an insect light, for instance. Okay, I'm done, and I'm ready I think I'm pretty confident with their identifications, at least to genus. I have the good information. I have my notes, and I'm going to go ahead and submit. I'm going to submit these 2 observations, and then they will pop up in my feed here in just a moment. There they are. Now you can see these other observations I have. Here are my observations. Some notes. When you see this needs ID, of course it needs some identification. So what will happen is that this is now out in the general population of people, of iNaturalist users. They're going to come here and they'll look at it. And now you can also look more. So for instance, let's say somebody comes along and they know that this is a certain kind of towhee. They will make a suggestion. They'll suggest an ID here. They can also make comments based on your observation, or maybe there's something interesting that they know. But I can also go and look at some things. I'm going to hit compare here, for instance. I'm going to hit compare. It's going to take me to other birds. And you can change, it's going to take me to other birds based on the area that you saw it in. So right now it's limiting the bird observations to Jeff Davis County in Texas and typical towhees. And so it only has 2 options here, the spotted towhee or the green-tailed towhee. So I might be feeling pretty confident in this, and I'm going to call this a spotted towhee. I'm pretty sure it is actually a spotted towhee. I can select that, and I'm going to do that. And now it's updated my observation to spotted towhee. Now, it is still what's considered a casual observation until someone else comes along and agrees. And at that point, this will turn green. This banner will turn green right here, and it'll say research grade, meaning that at least 2 people agree and there's no disagreement. Now, other people can come and disagree, and that will change let's say that somebody comes along and says, yeah, that's a spotted towhee. They agree. This becomes research grade. But somebody else could come along and say, no, it's this one. And you could have a discussion and an actual conversation about the identification. It's one of the beauties of this particular program. I can also go and edit this particular observation. Let's say that I want to change which picture is the front picture, or I want to change the location or the date. I can go to edit, and I can do that. I can change location, I can change my description, I can change a bunch of things. I'm not going to go into some of the details, but you can reorder the photos, which one is showing up first. You can actually turn photos as well. You can, let's say your photo is the wrong orientation, you could also change it here. But I don't really want to change that. And let's see, actually, I wonder, whenever I see up here this little bubble turns red, it means I have some kind of, something's happened. There's been some kind of interaction. I'm going to click on it. And sure enough, somebody has already interacted with one of the bird observations that I put up. Shows you how quickly this can happen. So I put genus Spizella because that was what I knew at the time without looking more. I could have gone and compared, but somebody comes along and says it's a chipping sparrow, and the black line on the lower, that means they're looking for this black line right there. So they know something about this. They've added this. I'm going to agree, and now this is going to turn here to a research grade observation. Now I could also go and hit compare, and it'll show me the options for the genus Spizella in that area. So these are the different options, and this is the one that's chipping sparrow that looks the closest to it. Now I could change this. I could change these things up here. For instance, I can change the location. I can decide I want to look at all of Texas. Okay, and it'll show me all the different ones in Texas, for instance, of that genus. I could also change the genus. Let's say I'm not sure that it is Spizella. I'm just going to hit sparrows. New World sparrows here. And now, of course, I've included sparrows from all of Texas, which means now I have a nice long list to look at. So it's essentially populating this little comparison chart with all sparrows that belong in that group that have been observed in Texas, right? And so it is nice to be able to narrow it down, but sometimes I have to broaden my scope to see what I'm looking at. Okay. Well, having said that, I'm pretty confident that we are now on the right excuse me, on the right suggestion here with regards to what it is. In fact, somebody else had already also responded saying that this was a chipping sparrow. Okay, so let's go now to projects. Now, what you would need to do is you would set up a project, and I'm not going to show you how to set up a project, but you would go set up a project for your class to help keep track of all these observations. Okay, and I'm going to do that. You can find projects here under Community. This goes to all of them. Okay, now you would go to your projects and manage your projects. I'm going to go down here to view all. You can see I'm part of a lot of different projects, and I've made a lot of different projects. I'm going to go to this example up here for the 2019 spring. Now, what I did in this project, the students are not in this project yet. I made the project, I put a banner here, a little icon, and I've described this project. This is a project for the collection of observations from a class, Biology 1407, at Aston Community College. And this particular class is administered by M. Nasir and Uden, who's a colleague of mine, and I set this up for him. Now, what you would do to add students is that you need to get there once they have registered for iNaturalist and gotten a username. You get that username from them, and fortunately you can just go in here and click and type in the user. So I'm going to type in an example here. This is a colleague of mine, Jay Norris, and it would add it to it. Now this project then is going to follow the observations of the people that are the users. I'm going to take Jay Norris out here. I've added myself, CM Eckerman, and I'm done. Okay, so this is nice because in this project, it shows you leaderboards for most observations, most species, the most species observed. Now, I'm the only one on here because I'm the only one that's added to the project so far. This would populate it with your students as well. And I just want to show you how this works. Now, you also see that the recent 2 observations I just added, they're added in here because it's following me. So let's say that I want to grade me on my observations. Well, I can go to View All here, and it's going to show me all the different observers, and I can click on the name or the icon here, and it'll take me to that person's information, whatever they decided to type, who they're following. But more importantly, as I scroll down, are the observations, species identifications, and so on. I'm going to click on observations. Okay, these are all the observations that the student, aka me, has made, and I want to grade them on their I want to grade them on the fungi. Let's say I'm going to give you an example, and I want to find all of their fungi observations. Well, what I would do is I'd go to search, and I would simply click on the fungus. Okay. Now, if I was doing vertebrates, I would have to find the amphibians and reptiles, the fish, or the amphibians, the fish, the reptiles, and the mammals and the birds. So I'd have to click all of those. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to look for fungus. Okay, that's what I'm interested in. Now, I could also limit this to place. I could limit it to time. Maybe you just want the observations from this semester, and I'm going to hit search. And these are all of the various fungi observations that the student, aka me, has made. And I can go and look at each one of these. I can see, I can look at the observation. I can see if it's a good image. I can look to see if I've got a good location and a date, because these are the things that I grade the student on. Not that it's identified to species level, because things like fungi are extremely difficult to get to species level, but that they have a good observation, that they have a date, a location, and good pictures or good images, and a description, which I'm missing in this one, that I would want them to have in their observation to help them to identify the organism, that other people can identify the organism. Okay, so that is basically how this works. I'm going to go back to the project. So I'm scooting back here. Some nice things about the project. So if we go back, this is the project. And as I go down, you can look at the stats. This is a nice thing for your students to look at too, because it can tell you, it'll tell you how many observations are research grade, how many still need ID. It can tell you how many of different species. So if I hover over it, this is the insects. This is the number of insects that have been observed. This is the number of plants that have been observed, and so on. And also you can see all of their various observations. I can continue to go down and I can look at all of the class observations. So the class students can come here too. They can see what others are observing and help identify as well. So it's another thing that they can do. And then this project keeps track of your number of observations, the number of species the class has seen, how many people have helped identify things, and how many observers there are. So as you add students to this project, the number of observers will go up. Now, I would recommend not putting yourself into the project. I did myself here just for illustration purposes, but not putting yourself, because you can end up overwhelming their observations. So I've been using this program for about 2 years, and I have almost 6,000 observations. Well, the average student in my class will get probably somewhere around 130 to 150 observations in the semester's time, and this number here would overwhelm there. So I take myself out of the project just so the students are comparing themselves and looking at each other's observations and not the instructor's observations. Okay, and so there's a lot more to iNaturalist. There's a lot of videos out there to help students learn how to use their phone with iNaturalist and how to make good observations. But I wanted to show you as an instructor how you would upload images and then track those observations by students in a project. And that's it for now. And in the future, I might make other videos for other things, in particular the various things that I do with my project, but this should get you a good start.